It's good to relax here on my space station. Well, there's not a whole lot to do because we've been so clear about the definition of capitalism and what it is and isn't that no socialist or communist is ever again going to try to bogusly claim that we keep moving the goalposts and are using a no true Scotsman fallacy. Right?
That's not capitalism, dude!
Oh, for fuck.
I point at the flaws of capitalism.
Yeah, I kinda doubt that.
And the response I get is, it's not capitalism.
Maybe the reason you keep getting that response is the examples you're giving aren't capitalism?
It's corporatism or something else.
Yeah, and this guy isn't going to give you the definitions of corporatism and capitalism. Capitalism is the private ownership of capital as well as the private exchange of goods and services. Private meaning without government. It's free individuals and groups engaging in voluntary exchanges. That's what we've said it means consistently for years. Corporatism is when government interferes with this process by passing regulations that give advantages to bigger corporations over small businesses, or by subsidizing corporations and industries, or bailing out the ones that screw up, or otherwise pick winners and losers and try and manage some part of the economy. If government is involved, it's not capitalism. Government is force, and force isn't voluntary. Capitalism is, or it just isn't capitalism.
But, in the same spirit, why do we criticize the Soviet Union? Because that wasn't communism.
Yes, it was! And every single proponent of socialism and communism, including one still prominent today like Bernie Sanders, praised it as a model to the world. You even had it from prominent economists like Paul Samuelson. In the 13th edition of his economics textbook, he wrote, "The Soviet economy is proof that, contrary to what many skeptics had earlier believed, a socialist command economy can function and even thrive." This was published in 1989. Later that year, the Berlin Wall fell, and less than 2 years later, the entire Soviet economy collapsed. Sanders also supported the Castros in Cuba, the Sandinistas in Nicaragua, and Hugo Chavez and Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela. As recently as 2013, economists such as Mark Weisbrot and Joseph Stiglitz were praising Venezuela as proof that socialism could work. But like the Soviet Union before them, after it all collapsed, people like you started crying, "Not real socialism!" Well, why weren't you saying that when it seemed like things were going great? You're perfectly willing to accept it as socialism or communism as long as things look fine. But as soon as it starts to go south, as we free marketeers always predict it would, you turn away from it and act like we're the ones being dishonest. Whereas we've given you clear and precise definitions of capitalism and corporatism. You can apply those at any given time. We'll tell you which one it is before knowing anything else, just by looking at how much government intrusion there is in that particular corporation or industry.
Why do we criticize Vietnam? It's not communism. Why do we criticize China? It's not communism. Why do we criticize any of these communist countries when their system is not communism? You know what the leftists say?
It's not true communism, dude! Fuck you!
And they're correct.
But again, people like you kept saying they were communists as long as things looked like they were going great. Only now, when all these problems emerge, do you start whining, "Not real communism!"
But it always turned into a dictatorship, a vile, rotten, filthy, gulag-infested hellhole, right? And it's no difference with capitalism.
Oh, really? Got any examples? Didn't think so.
Because they start out with capitalism. And it always ends up with corporatism.
But it's not capitalism that causes it to become corporatist. Corporatism happens because people like you start whining for government to step in and regulate, which they do by force. This is like saying my TV watching turns into me not watching TV when someone steals my TV. Yeah, I'm not watching TV anymore, but that's hardly my choice, is it? The fault is with those who stole my TV. By the same token, it's not capitalism that's to blame for all of this, but socialists and communists like you who keep begging the government to regulate. You've stopped capitalism from working by force, and then you blame capitalism for it not working anymore.
I think the definition of idiot would be you try something and it fails, and you try the exact same again.
Because this time it's gonna work.
It can work. This has been proven. Just like I can continue to watch TV as long as someone doesn't take my TV by force. But as soon as your blessed and holy socialists come in to try and undo the problems with capitalism, whatever their deluded minds think those are, it's their regulations that become corporatism. That's why economists call it regulatory capture. And we will tell you this at the time. We'll tell you that this would happen if you start regulating, just like we're warning you now about what will happen if you regulate social media. We warn you ahead of time this will happen, and we even beg you not to do it, so how the fuck is it our fault when it happens? Whereas in communist countries, they're in complete control of everything. And again, people just like you were saying they were communist and pointing to them as proof that communism works up until the point where the failures become obvious, and only at that point did you start whining, not real communism. That is the difference.
Except it won't. It will always turn into a corporate hellhole. Like the USA. Always.
Then explain why it hasn't in countries at the top of the Economic Freedom Index, like Hong Kong, New Zealand, Switzerland, and Australia. You know what? You haven't even mentioned one single example. Do you even have any?
Being anti-capitalist doesn't mean that you're a communist.
No, but it does mean you want to use force to intrude on voluntary interactions between peaceful people and groups. Because again, that's the definition of capitalism. Oh, really? Well, when people like you were saying Venezuela is so great, why didn't you move there? When people like you were saying Cuba is so great, why didn't you move there? When people like you were saying the Soviet Union was so great, why didn't you move there? You're staying in a capitalist country because you know you're better off there. You try and whine and play the victim about how you're a slave, but you're not. And you're shitting all over the graves of actual slaves who fought and died for their freedom. Capitalism is voluntary. It is antithetical to slavery. You know what's so hilarious about this video? His description, and I quote, "Capitalism has almost ruined our ability to survive on this planet in about 250 years. Tribalism, on the other hand, worked just fine for 500,000 plus years. I rest my case." So for 500,000 years under tribalism, it worked just fine while people lived with parasites and died from disease, and the average lifespan was 19, and few people lived past 30, and they died from the heat and the cold and all sorts of other things. An amazing proportion of them starved to death. They had to have 10 or more kids just so 1 or 2 of them could grow up to have children of their own. And most of this was still true through the 18th century, even among the rich. But after 250 years of capitalism, life expectancy is pushing 80, and is even greater in some places. Life expectancy is heavily correlated with economic freedom. In the world's most capitalist economy, Hong Kong, life expectancy is 81 for men and 87 for women. In other countries at the top of the list, for both sexes, it's 83 for Singapore, Australia, and Switzerland, 82 for New Zealand, and 81 for Ireland. And it's not just that. Capitalism developed temperature control so we don't die from the heat or cold. Capitalism fixed the problem of starvation to such an extent that it's obesity that the poor now wrestle with. It was also the most capitalistic countries that developed vaccines and antibiotics to the extent that things that would have killed the richest person in the world 100 years ago can be completely 100% cured with $4 of antibiotics from Walmart. Infant mortality is way down, and it's rare for women to die in childbirth. In every available metric, in every conceivable way, you're better off under capitalism. This guy wants to take us back to poverty, starvation, and misery. Hey, if you enjoyed this video, why not hit like and subscribe? And to make sure I can produce more, support this channel on Patreon and Maker Support. And check out all the other great content here, like this video selected especially for you.